Often when I try to describe the whole German car idea to people in the United States, it's easiest to say the engineer who works on these cars knows when he goes to work in the morning that the car he is working on will undoubtedly be driven absolutely as fast as it will go for the entire duration of a tank of gas. Something that Americans just simply can't imagine. As Americans, we have difficulty imagining cars that would even survive that kind of treatment. And yet, that's just a basic given with a Porsche.
The passion is obviously very high, and it's no secret that everybody at Porsche is absolutely Porsche-minded and very enthusiastic about designing sports cars.
He tells me he works since 26 years for Porsche. As one of the old specialists, he knows all and he sees all. He's looking for the rough areas here and you have a better feeling with the white one in the hand.
It's not a huge place. It's not thousands and thousands of workers. It's a very nice, compact company where an awful lot of people know each other. And it's very nice to think about cars that you and I can buy coming out of that atmosphere.
You know, we think about craftsmanship dying these days and everything going to automation, and that's kind of a sad state, you know, for us, you know, because in racing we really appreciate the fact and the amount of work it takes and the hands-on kind of thing.
And it was so different going to watch the factory, the guys building the cars at Porsche in their nice long coats, and you know these guys are doctors, and you know they can go back home and when they talk to their friends say, yes, I work for Porsche.
I felt after the first time of being at Weissach, if I'm really good in my life when I die, that's where I'm going to end up.
The design philosophy is, as we would call it in German, Formsprache. And Formsprache, translated in English, means form language.
To me, there's nothing more exciting than something that is truly simple, but not boring. I mean, that's what comedy is. When I do a joke, it should be very simple. But there has to be so much packed into that little space, you know, that it makes you laugh. A lot of comedy is about density of thought, and Porsches have great density of thought. I mean, in the size of that car, there is more thought in that little car about how to get everything in there and how to make it work in this particular way than in cars, than in 10 cars 3 times the size, you know?
The steering wheel is connected to the wheels and not just out there somewhere. And the shifter is perfectly aligned and in sync with the engine. And every single detail is just perfect. Today we call that ergonomics. And back then we just thought, well, gee, that's pretty good. They put it where it's supposed to be.
You can go and sit in a 1967 911, or you can go sit in a 1995 twin turbo, and it feels familiar. And there's no other car company that you can do that with.
The Porsche shape, the 911 shape, has lasted over 30 years. If you put 100 cars in a line and said, pick out the Porsche, you would be able to go instantly to that Porsche.
In the case of a 911, there's a very special key secret, and that is, it's not only the relationship of the whole body to the wheels, it's the relationship of the cockpit to the wheels. The cockpit is narrower than the body is narrower than the wheels itself.
It's like the closest you could get to driving in a Bullet. It even looks like one.
It's a classic.
It's basically an evolution. So we went back in time to the 356 and then the first 911 and looked at those cars and how they developed into the later models of the 911. And we basically kept the elements that we liked and we changed the elements that we felt were not in keeping with the original philosophy.
With the Carrera 4S, we went one stage further, and we've really accentuated the difference between the front and rear track. And we've given it very wide rear fenders, very wide rear track. And this is what creates these very muscular-looking reflections on the side of the car.
I work since 1980 by Porsche. I am 42 years old, and I'm development engineer, and I drive often these cars. It's a very funny job and I like it to do. Every people pay for this job and I get money for this job. Okay, so I think we can start now and we will ride. Yeah. We're sitting now in a Carrera 4S, and you see in the 4S the handling is very good. I have no problems to drive this car so fast.
We're at Willow Springs driving around the Carrera 4. The advantage of the four-wheel drive, the all-wheel drive system, obviously in the wet, it's going to put traction down better in the wet because you're using all four tires to accelerate with. The reason it's more stable under just high, straight speed is that the viscous coupling, as the car goes faster, realizes that transfers more of the power to the front wheels, giving it more of a stable situation.
I'm going 120 miles an hour. I take both hands off the wheel, relax, full throttle, not worried about now we're at 130. I wouldn't recommend this for anybody at home, but there's so much confidence Porsche builds in the car that it really gives you the feedback that you want. When I come off the corner, I'm full throttle sliding right now at 100 miles an hour.
We need to go over here at kind of maximum height. On this shoot that we were just on, the driver was a great professional driver that we worked with a lot, and I asked him to, we just wanted the attitude of the car to just be slightly sliding, not a big oversteer, not a big deal, but we wanted that aggressive sliding shot from overhead. The first run, nothing happened. The second run, nothing happened. Every time building up the speed. And finally I said, well, you know, if we get into more of a rally style here and flick it into the corner and drive hard on the accelerator, you'll start to slide it. Here's a professional driver. I'm asking him to slide the car, and it's almost impossible to slide it. With the four-wheel drive, the width of the wheels and tires, the suspension setup, all of that is just making an incredible handling car, and you really have to work at it to push it beyond that limit.
You can't imagine the difference between the traditional sports car as exemplified by the English Jaguars, MGs, Triumphs, Austin Healey's, and Porsche. The quickest way to see the difference was to cross a railroad track. We would work until 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning tuning our racing cars. We'd take the cars and go out and run them around the country roads at 3 in the morning just to, number one, see if they were running properly, number two, just for the hell of it. And you'd hit a railway crossing in an Austin Healey, a Triumph, an MG, and it would mean slamming on the brakes, slowing down, changing gear, and then creeping across the tracks. And with a Porsche, you didn't lift. You just went, boom.
This guy looked for a little mistake on the finished car, and he can change it. We only have a single person who can do it.
How long has he been doing this?
Oh, just a moment. Wie lange machen Sie das schon, wollen die wissen?
Ich?
Ja.
36 Jahre.
He has a special profession, but it's not for a long time. 36 years.
You know, some cars are only fun when you're going fast. You go, look how fast I'm going. Porsche, you're going 30, but you're feeling things through the suspension, through the steering wheel, through the engine. You're being entertained at 30 miles an hour, as well as 130.
2 words, let's put it this way. One, sky-hooked, and the other would be ground-hooked. Now, if you develop a car with a philosophy that is sky-hooked, you always try to insulate the driver and the passenger from everything that's happening around you. We follow a different philosophy. We believe we should develop our cars in a way that I would describe as being ground hooked. And ground hooked actually would mean you're always in a position to perfectly understand and communicate with your car.
Now we will drive over the bumps to test the suspension and the stiffness of the body of the car.
If you're completely insulated from what happens around you, you get no feeling.
When a street 911 goes onto a racetrack, you can just beat that car all day long, abuse it, drive it around a racetrack at full speed, and then drive it home at night. And actually the car probably is thanking you for doing it, because that's what Porsches are all about, is performance.
At a place like the Daytona 24-hour, you see perfectly ordinary 911s, fleets of them out there just going like the hammers of hell, and going hour after hour after hour. And in the morning, when all kinds of exotic stuff has dropped out, there'll be 9 guys from Germany and another group of guys from the United States who are still sailing around the racetrack in their 911s.
Our big chief, Hurley Porsche, always said we must go to the races with sports cars, that the customer can see that's the same car I can buy.
There's so many similarities between the Super Cup car, which is a racing car, and a normal stock 911. First, you'll notice that the dashboard is very similar to the dashboard in a street 911. It's got all the gauges are the same. The suspension and the engine are the same in this car as in a production car. The transmission is a 6-speed transmission, and it's identical to the ones that we use on a street car.
A turbo need about 4.6 seconds from 0 to 100 kilometers per hour. But on the brakes, 2.6 seconds from 100 to 0.
After winning Pikes Peak in 1994 in the open class, I really wanted to go in 1995 and race the new twin turbo. We basically put the roll cage in the car, put a fuel cell in the car, and showed up and raced the car totally stock, and went on to win Pikes Peak in 1995. I went with the same crew that I had before, and they were all asking me, what do we do now? Basically, we clean the car.
A lot of the technology that is developed for racing trickles down to the road car, and this is where the Varioram thing came from.
What Varioram does is it gives you increased torque and horsepower in the RPM range that we most often drive in. And you can stay in a higher gear. You can stay in 4th or 5th gear and lug it down to like 20 miles an hour and put your foot on the gas and pull smoothly away.
There's another thing that we got from racing. In the early days of the 911, we had, for instance, chromed windshield wipers. And our race drivers at Le Mans were complaining at night when it was raining that on these chromed windshield wipers, they got reflections from light. And I mean, if you go down the straight at Le Mans with something like 250 plus miles an hour, this is not really what helps you stay on the road. So the racing team at Le Mans one night decided to spray the windshield wipers with black. So when we started to paint our windshield wipers and a lot of the chrome black, it was actually not a fashion that we followed. It was maybe a fashion that we created, but there was a purpose behind it.
Back in the early days at Le Mans, they would line the cars up on one side of the track, and the drivers would be on the other side of the track. And the gun would go off, and the drivers would run across the track, jump into their cars, and take off. Well, Porsche decided that it would save a few tenths of a second if the ignition was on the left-hand side, so the guy could jump in his car, take his left hand, start it up, and with his right hand put the car into gear.
This bridge is a little bit more than 83 meters. If you go with a new turbo with 300 kilometers per hour on the Autobahn, you need 1 second from this wall to the wall on the other side, in 1 second.
I had a friend at one of the races that was driving one of these special built cars in one lap of America, and he said, yeah, he says, I thought I had a really good chance I could win this thing. I had this lightweight car, and then I looked and read somewhere and found out you're going to be in this 911 twin turbo all-wheel drive car, and he goes, well, second doesn't sound too bad anymore.
I've had other automobile manufacturers offer me cars and money to race, and the biggest problem with that is I'd have to race against Porsches.
Here we produce the 107 cars a day. 13 of these are Targas.
The original Targa design was introduced in the middle of the 60s, and it was a very new way of open air driving.
When the Targa ceased to be produced in 1994, the Porsche engineers had all these very loyal Targa fans to appease, and they decided, okay, we're going to build a whole new design based on the new 911.
The roof rails that we have along the sides had to be as lean as possible, and we had to make this glass area as large as possible. You have the problem that you're dealing with a car that's able to travel at least 170 miles an hour, top speed. And at 170, there's one hell of a pull, aerodynamic pull, on the side glass. Now we're asking them to engineer a roof glass, which was about 4 times the surface area, that's still going to stay in place at 170 miles an hour.
The idea of having the whole roof glass is terrific, and to have that work successfully is pretty a nifty bit of craftsmanship.
It has this fantastic glass roof, which you can open at high speeds, and you can drive around on a miserable day and look at the sky and say, well, it's gray, but at least I see something.
It's like a jet fighter, you know, it's like a bubble-top car.
In the full open position, it's as quiet, if not quieter, than a sunroof coupe.
And you can have a lot of fun watching the top slide back and forth and pushing all the little buttons and levers.
Porsche has to think of fun all the time, because fun is an intrinsic part of what a Porsche is. It's perfectly useful day in, day out transportation, but it has to be more than that. Every Porsche has to have a percentage of amusement, a percentage of entertainment baked into the mix.
You always find a little bit different way to drive the car. You get a little bit more out of it the next time you drive that mountain road. Many other cars that I end up driving during the year on photo shoots and things, they end up, you know, you've done everything you could in the car instantly, and you don't feel like there's much else you could do in it. Whereas this 911, you keep driving it, you keep learning a little bit more about it, and it becomes a totally entertaining car as a driver.
It's always a car to me that impresses the people inside it more than the people outside it, you know, and that's what I like. I like to get in it and get out on the road. That's what I enjoy. Not parking it in front of a cafe and just leaning on it, you know. That's not it.
Every time a new Porsche model comes out, we say, well, this is it. In fact, we have got ourselves in trouble because we've said, this is the best 911 ever built. Then the next model comes out and we say, no, this is the best 911 ever built. So we stopped saying it's the best 911 built until they stopped building 911s.